The days of Maduro as Venezuela's top leader are numbered. And this isn't just our opinion. Donald Trump said so himself in a recent interview. He immediately added, however, that he doesn't believe an invasion of Venezuela will actually happen. Still, for the first time, Trump has publicly, loudly, clearly predicted Nicolás Maduro's fall, a statement that could be interpreted as a clear objective. To that end, he continues mobilizing a massive naval and air force presence that would intimidate not only Venezuela, but almost any other country in the world. For example, on October 26th, Washington sent the world's largest and most powerful aircraft carrier, the USS Gerald R. Ford, to the Caribbean. It's a true monster, about 100,000 tons, nuclear-powered and armed to the teeth. It carries around 90 aircraft, including F-18s and F-35s. To give you an idea of its scale, the air capacity of the Gerald Ford alone surpasses that of most NATO countries. And it's not traveling alone. Its strike group includes 3 destroyers and 2 auxiliary ships. They join more than 8 other warships, a nuclear submarine, and squadrons of F-35s and CV-22 Ospreys already stationed near Puerto Rico, posing a growing threat to Maduro. In other words, the Caribbean is now more militarized than at any time since the Cuban Missile Crisis. Maduro could be halfway out of Miraflores Palace already, or so Trump hinted on television. The logic behind such a massive military buildup seems clear. Maduro has been offered a negotiation process, and if he accepts it, things might go better for him, but he's leaving one way or another. Maria Corina appears to understand this and might be right. By early October, the U.S. Southern Command, which oversees operations in Latin America, had already deployed more than 10% of the entire U.S. fleet in the region. With the arrival of the Gerald Ford, that figure rose to 14%. That's enormous. And such a display must have an ambitious purpose, otherwise it wouldn't make sense. In this vein, just a few days ago, the Miami Herald reported that Washington had already decided to strike military targets inside Venezuela. The report spread worldwide but was quickly denied by Secretary of State Marco Rubio, who accused the newspaper of being misled by unreliable sources. As he emphasized, any attack on Venezuela would be announced by the president himself. According to the information available, no final decision has yet been made. But since the Gerald Ford deployment, rumors have exploded. We might be only days or weeks away from a conflict against Nicolás Maduro and his cronies. Yes, we've been hearing this since August, and so far, the only thing that's happened is an intensification of attacks on narco boats. The latest strike on October 28th left 14 dead. For now, with no further developments, Venezuelans are torn between cautious anticipation and growing frustration. Even so, this time there are reasons for hope. For Trump, this situation could serve his political legacy and help him gain votes at a time when polls are grim. The latest election results on November 4th, when Democrats scored several major wins, might have been an additional motivator. Combine that with this massive military deployment, and everything seems to be in place. The Gerald Ford and its strike group are far too valuable to be sent on a months-long cruise through the Caribbean for no reason. Analysts in the U.S. point to 2 clear signs that an operation might already be underway: the deployment of the Ford itself, the sudden appearance of tents at the old Roosevelt Roads Naval Base in Puerto Rico. Satellite images from October 29 showed 20 new military tents southeast of the runway near an abandoned hangar. This former naval base in the town of Ceiba was closed in 2004 and has been largely deserted since. However, in recent weeks, it suddenly began housing F-35 fighters in new military tents, leading many to believe it's being reactivated unofficially. Analysts at the Center for Strategic and International Studies suggest Washington may be refurbishing and re-equipping the base, which would explain the sudden appearance of those tents. The question is, for what purpose? Is all this related to Venezuela? Is it being prepared as a base for anti-narcotics operations or for something bigger, like a potential attack campaign against Venezuela? Information about military preparations is always limited, but this is roughly the current picture. B-21 and B-52 bombers continue flying near Venezuelan waters. Special Forces helicopters have been spotted as well. Some say these are routine exercises, while others believe they're mapping Maduro's air defenses. There have even been reports of increased GPS interference near the Venezuelan coast. A few days ago, another U.S. destroyer docked in Trinidad and Tobago, just a few miles from Venezuela officially for joint training. So what's been Maduro's response? As usual, he's trying to appear strong on camera, but in reality, he's showing fear. Suspended energy ties with Trinidad and Tobago as an act of retaliation and recently signed a new alliance with his close friend Vladimir Putin. The historic and strategic alliance signed by President Putin and by me here in Venezuela is for peace, development, and the sharing of scientific and technological knowledge, Maduro declared. In practice, Russia and Venezuela are now closer than ever. The new agreement expands cooperation in energy, mining, transport, communications, and of course, security, a diplomatic lifeline, just as Maduro finds himself sinking. In recent days, several Russian cargo planes have been detected flying to Venezuela. One heavy Russian transport aircraft landed in Caracas amid mounting U.S.-Venezuelan tensions. It took off from Russia and made stops in Armenia, Algeria, Morocco, Senegal, and Mauritania before heading to Caracas, apparently to avoid Western airspace and possible cargo inspections. Naturally, these stopovers have fueled speculation about what's being delivered. But whatever those planes carry, it doesn't seem enough to calm the regime's nerves. According to internal U.S. reports, top Chavasta officials are paranoid, changing phones weekly, rotating bodyguards, moving between houses, and avoiding using the same car on consecutive days. Nobody trusts anyone. This time feels different. The arrival of the Gerald Ford in the Caribbean could change everything. The USS Gerald R. Ford is not just another carrier, it's the U.S. Navy's flagship. Floating city worth $13 billion, powered by nuclear reactors and capable of launching supersonic jets every 45 seconds. It represents the pinnacle of American naval power, and for Maduro, a nightmare on the horizon. Every element that Washington has positioned in the Caribbean follows the classic U.S. model of operation, pointing to three possible phases of action if intervention in Venezuela were to happen. Phase 1. Missile strikes. The Ford is escorted by 3 destroyers, which, together with existing forces, bring the total launch capacity in the region to about 700 vertical launch missile cells, enough for hundreds of precision strikes. In such an operation, the first targets would likely be radar systems, command centers, and Venezuela's advanced air defenses, S-300s, Buks, and Pechoras, all purchased from Russia. Phase 2. Air superiority. Once defenses were neutralized, the U.S. could launch a sustained air campaign using bombers from U.S. bases and F-35s stationed in Puerto Rico, alongside the carrier's 90 aircraft. With its electromagnetic catapult system, Gerald Ford can launch up to 220 aircraft per day in combat, conditions essentially functioning as a full-scale air force at sea. Phase 3. Special operations if the regime still refused to surrender. Elite U.S. forces could be deployed via CV-22, Osprey aircraft hybrid tiltrotators that can take off vertically like helicopters but fly long distances like airplanes. These would carry special forces units such as the SEALs into Venezuelan territory to capture or eliminate key figures before swiftly withdrawing. Black Hawk helicopters could support shorter urban operations, just as they did in the mission to kill Osama bin Laden. Altogether, the forces deployed are massive, tailor-made for rapid, high-precision operations. If Washington wanted, it could cripple Venezuela's military capacity in a matter of hours, or decapitate the regime entirely. But the question remains, will they actually do it? Most likely, this is still a strategy of maximum pressure. This is what we can do if you Dante step down. Yet the sheer size of the buildup makes it hard to believe it will all end with a few anti-drug operations and threats. So, why does Maduro still refuse to leave? Option 1. Resist. History shows why. About 69% of personalist dictators end up imprisoned, exiled, or killed after leaving power. For Maduro, stepping down could be deadlier than staying. Leaving means losing power, money, networks, and most of our protection. Staying gives him at least some options. Moreover, Venezuela's military has been transformed into a network of business fiefdoms. Generals control their own slices of the pie. Gold, fuel, food, smuggling. It's less an army than a mafia enterprise. Why would they destroy their own livelihoods? Promises of amnesty from the opposition or Washington are met with laughter. They've heard it all before. Option 2. External protection. Maduro's regime survives thanks to powerful allies Russia, China, and Iran, out of ideology, but strategy. For them, Venezuela is a low-cost way to irritate Washington. Russia sends advisors and buys gold. China cautiously continues trade through front companies. Iran ships fuel and technology when needed. These ties give the regime a thin layer of political oxygen, though one that's shrinking fast. Option 3. Fear of chaos. Even if Maduro fell, what would come next? Venezuela is awash with weapons. Armed Chavista groups, drug cartels with private armies, and Colombian guerrillas like the ELN. The potential for chaos could deter Washington from fully committing to regime change. Ultimately, real change might depend on Venezuelans themselves. If the opposition seizes this moment, it could encourage Washington to act. Otherwise, the future remains uncertain. For now, one question hangs over the Caribbean. Will Venezuela finish the job if the U.S. only applies outside pressure? Only time will tell.